You're listening to Bark and Wag's 15-Minute Vet Talk. Each week, your host, Polly Requa, interviews veterinarians and individuals in the pet industry from across the nation answering pet questions. Bark and Wag podcast is produced weekly for your enjoyment, and show notes can be found at barkandwag.com under the podcast tab. That's BARKNWAG.com. Please remember to subscribe to Bark and Wag 15-Minute Vet Talk.
Welcome to Bark and Wag 15-Minute Vet Talk. I'm your host, Polly Requa. Today we're talking to Dr. Laura Brown, owner of Green Tree Animal Hospital in Libertyville, Illinois, about what to do if your dog eats marijuana. Welcome, Dr. Brown. I wanted to have you back on the podcast because probably about 6 to 7 months ago, I had you on and we were discussing if your dog ate marijuana, what to do. And I wanted to let you know that when I did that interview, I was thinking of some, 18 to 25-year-old having a party and their dog just ended up eating the marijuana. Well, what happened to us is we were on a hike and Maddie, our black lab, ate marijuana.
And you didn't know it, right? Like you didn't know it.
So what happened was we got home from the walk because Amanda, my daughter, had soccer, and so we were in this kind of remote parking lot, and we got home around 7:00, and she was super agitated. She was on the couch, off the couch, on the couch. So I let her out and just still not really right. So we went to bed, and the next morning at about 6 a.m, she fell off the bed. And I thought, oh my gosh, she's had a stroke. So I got her down the stairs and outside, and her tail was underneath her legs. And I thought, I wasn't quite sure what was wrong with her. So I called our vet at like 7 a.m, and just left a message saying, I think something's severely wrong with Maddie, and I dropped the girls off at school at 7:15. I'll be in your parking lot at 7:30. So the vet met Maddie and I in the parking lot, and she'd gone to the bathroom all in the back of the car. And
urinated? She urinated or defecated?
Just wheedled. But so she helped me get her into the exam room. And then she came, but I was in the waiting room, and she came back out and she said, your dog is so stoned.
Wait, could she walk out of your car to the office, or did you guys have to carry her?
She was walking, but her eyes were all, now I look back. So, of course, I said, well, it wasn't mine.
Right.
And
but you do live in Colorado.
Yeah, exactly.
So it could have been, okay.
But anyway, so it turns out, then they tested her for antifreeze.
Right.
Just to make sure, because we were in a Breckenridge overnight parking lot. And the vet was saying that this happens all the time, that dogs will eat feces. People will drop brownies out of the car or gummies so I just wanted to have you back on because one of the signs she told me was that the dogs have no feeling, from in their back end, and so that's why they go to the bathroom.
Right.
And I think that there was a fine line of, I don't know how people could tell unless you saw the dog ate the marijuana on whether or not, not to make the decision not to go to the vet, because if she had antifreeze, she would have been dead.
Right. I think in that situation, you had no choice.
Right.
Because you didn't see her eat it. I think you guys have a unique situation in Colorado because it is legal there, for it to be more available and out and about, and people aren't hiding it like they do in Illinois, because it is still illegal here. Obviously, the most common sign, they act stoned, so they're pretty dopey, sleepy, maybe eyes dilated, and they do leak urine, like they have no control of their bladder. So that's a very common side effect. The weird thing for me on you guys was her agitation when you got home. Like, I don't know why, being stoned doesn't usually make them agitated. But, maybe in the beginning she just felt weird and then she went to sleep. And like, what time do you think she ate the marijuana? Like,
well, she was off leash from, 4:30, whatever soccer was, 4:30 to 6:30.
So 6:30 latest, you guys got home. And what time did you think she was being agitated? Like right away or 3 hours?
Probably like 8 o'clock, 8 or 9. Yeah. And then I went to bed at 10.
And she was good to go to bed, easy peasy, went to bed like regular.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then slept really good. So you're like 12 hours later or better when you noticed something was wrong with her.
Right.
So think about that's interesting too. Like, people need to keep that in mind. If they know their dog ingested marijuana, then it would be nice to make them vomit it up. But if they don't know how long later, it might be hard to figure that out. If they're like you thought, she was having a stroke because she was with it and was, couldn't control her legs and was, So did they keep her at the hospital on IV fluids, or did they just take her home and let her sleep it off?
They just, once we got the test back, they just said, take her home and she'll be back to normal within 24 to 48 hours.
Yeah. I mean, they got to stay in a dark, quiet room. They just need to, relax them. It'll increase the speed of their body metabolizing it, make them pee a lot and get it out of their system, depending on how bad they are, if they have blood pressure issues or anything like that. The worrisome part for me, and probably not so much for you guys in Colorado, because it's like the real deal and it's, legal there. But I had a case of pot ingestion and the dog was the opposite of stoned. It was agitated, it was whining, it was vocalizing, it had a fever, its temperature was like 105. And when I finally figured it out, when the owners finally fessed up, they said that the pot was laced with the hallucinogen.
Oh, wow.
The dog had made it have a high fever and its brain was like wacky. It couldn't, process that. So that dog needed a specific treatment called cyproheptadine and IV fluids and a dark room and actually sedation so it could process all of that.
Well, Chuck the pug had ingested the marijuana. I mean, could that have killed him?
Because of volume, and Matt is such a much bigger dog, you mean?
Yeah, well, I don't know how much she ate, right. But I mean, the good thing is Chuck, he only likes certain foods.
He's not a lab, so he's particular.
Yeah, right. And so if with a small dog, what happens if...
Similar stuff, you know what I mean? It just might be, I don't think, I have not heard, I don't have that much experience with marijuana toxicity. I suppose it's possible for them to die, but I think you're going to figure out something's wrong before that could happen, because you're with them so much, you'd be seeing symptoms. And if you knew your dog had ingested pot and he started acting more than stone and is, really non-responsive, he needs to get treatment.
Yeah.
I don't think it would, you got some time there. You think about Maddie's stuff 12 hours later and how it took her 3 days. But if she would have, she was better by the next day, right?
Yeah, she's a little better, but she definitely was
still stoned.
Yeah.
So, every system's a little bit different, but the smaller doggy probably would have been, worse for longer.
Yeah.
And maybe your vet would have been like, based on looking at him, maybe we should keep Chuck, IV fluids, keep an eye on him, especially Chuck because he's a pug and his airway is different. If he was having any trouble breathing or anything, you might want to just keep him for observation.
Sure.
And make sure it didn't get too far gone into like coma situation or something like that.
Yeah. And the other thing, I think that you had a really good message at the last podcast was, as a veterinarian, you don't really care what the owners are doing. You're just trying to save the dog. So if your dog, has had something that's laced or something that's not marijuana, it just helps you help Absolutely. The dog. Yeah.
And we never, I don't know that I speak for every veterinarian, but I would never call the police on someone if they if their dog accidentally got into something they shouldn't have, unless it was intentional and I had means that people were maybe trying to abuse the dog. I do think
Sure.
there are some people out there that might think it's funny to watch that, but it doesn't happen that much. And maybe if I was an emergency vet and was, in the middle of the night hours, I would see more, but I don't see it very often here. I'm never, people are embarrassed to tell you that has happened, but it's much better to be honest for your dog's sake than it is to risk not telling and making us guess. We have to figure it out. It's hard enough to figure it out as it is now because the dogs don't talk to us and we rely on the owners for all the history is so important. So to withhold information makes it really hard for us to figure it out and bad prognosis for your dog.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I just wanted to let you know about our experience that.
And Maddie's all good.
Maddie's enjoying the Colorado lifestyle.
Right? Well, they say Illinois is thinking about legalizing it here too. And a little side note, there are some holistic vets that are maybe already using marijuana for dogs for treatment of chronic pain and seizures maybe. So there probably will come down the road some medical treatment. Marijuana will probably be used in animals like it is in people for certain medical conditions.
Yeah, and I definitely want to find a vet in Colorado to discuss that because it's helping dogs with arthritis and seizures. So you are exactly right. So a holistic vet, someone that already deals a lot with herbs and things like that, will probably be able to expound on that sooner than me. I mean, I'm definitely interested in learning about that because, we always want to have other options for making our dogs feel better. Just don't know how that'll be regulated, how the people will get it, how we'll figure out what dose to give. So it'll be interesting. We look forward to that in the future. Good. Well, I look forward to having you back on the podcast, and thank you for discussing marijuana with us today.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to Bark and Wag's 15-Minute Vet Talk. If you like what you just heard, we hope you'll pass along our web address, www.barkandwag.com, to your friends and other pet owners. Have a pressing question for a veterinarian? Ask your question at barkandwag.com under the podcast tab. This has been a KFR production. Join us next time for another edition of Bark and Wag's 15-Minute Vet Talk.